Until I found out there were other ways to score.
Hirano and Kagiura is very different from Sasuke and Miyano. At first glance, Hirakage is absolutely pure trope city. Roommates pretending to be friends, 10-second touches, and even Kagi's puppy pouts. But the chaos isn't just for laughs. It's a story about love, boundaries, and Hirano's brain slowly catching up to his heart. Underneath the sparkly eyes and offbeat humor, it's a slow burn exploration of what it means to really realize your feelings, navigate another person's heart, and to figure out where friendship ends and love begins. And honestly, that messy, awkward, totally chaotic process is exactly what makes Hirano and Kagiura so irresistibly charming. And yes, I know that I didn't put a pretty dedication scream this time, but come on, it works, admit it. Hirano and Kagiura looks like a tropey, lighthearted spin-off, but it's really about boundaries, figuring out feelings, and what happens when one person's heart is running ahead of the others. The fact that Miyano tries his best to avoid any and all BL tropes while Hirano and Kagiura fall into all of them is such a hilarious juxtaposition. It's kinda ironic, but it also makes a nice contrast and makes the manga unique from its predecessor. From roommates just living your day-to-day lives, to 10-second touches, to even the classic trial date, which I do count as a trope, Hirano and Kagiura leans into every single one, and it leans into them hard. And yet, despite all the chaos, it never feels shallow. Each gag, each exaggerated pouting face, and each sparkle-eyed stare actually tells us something about how these two navigate feelings, boundaries, and trust. Even the confused relationship status trope works in their favor. Hirano acts like a couple with Kagi so often that he can't even tell the difference between friendship and romance. And honestly, that's hilarious and kinda relatable for a lot of people. They're basically already married. They live together, rely on each other, and try new things together. They just slowly started leaning more and more on each other. So much so that I bet if they ever had to separate, they'd definitely feel the gap. It says a lot about the way Hirano sees relationships, which we'll talk about in a bit. See, I find the relationship status thing especially funny because Miyano wants to avoid this exact thing, and then his senior turns around and falls headfirst into it. I'm really glad it turned out like this though, because it feels way more in character for these guys than for Sasamiya. Both titular characters in the parent series are quite straightforward and know what they want. I mean, Sasuke just holds back because he doesn't want to make Miyano uncomfortable, and it takes Miyano a while for him to figure it out. But once they started dating, they're a lot more open about their boundaries. Miyano would never let this happen, which is even shown in the manga. For these guys go, I definitely see it, though I still hope they resolve it soon. Hirano and Sasuke pretending like they barely know each other, when they're obviously quite close. I mean, not necessarily emotionally, but definitely closer than normal high school boys would want to admit, and I find it really funny. And light novels and Kagi being jealous of Sasuke influencing Hirano attest to that. Also, the roommate to lovers thing is so common, and yet these guys still manage to be unique. Usually, there's a huge misunderstanding, which I mean, there kind of was, but it was literally only a first impression thing, and then that's it. Or it's an accident or only for convenience, but it actually makes sense here. The school assigned them together. That's it. That could very, very easily actually happen. Usually the scenario is so ridiculous that I can't even take a series that is supposed to be super heartfelt and all of that seriously, because of how over the top everything becomes. You get what I'm saying? They took the trope and made it better. The trial/accidental date is also something I very much consider to be a trope, like I said before. It happens all the time. Admittedly, most series do manage to put a little bit of their own flavor onto it, so I honestly don't hate this trope as much as some of the others, but it can still get a little boring. Here, however, it was different, in a good way. It wasn't a major tipping point in the relationship, but it was just a small step. Hirano is really in denial here. He keeps thinking back to a conversation he had with Miyano earlier about how your heart races when you see the person you love, and how you'll think about how you want to see them all the time. and Hirano is actively denying having any sort of experience in this area. Literally right after, he thinks he wants to see Kagi and immediately catches himself and denies it. When they meet up for their date, Kagi looks really good and Hirano's heart thumps. But since Kagi also startled him, he attributes it to that. I really like this. It takes a small step, but it doesn't have them... honestly, I don't really know how to explain it any further. It's not like a huge emotional build-up, but it's a very small step, and it matches with the pacing of this story, which I'll talk about in a bit. Now the 10-second stink. This is new. Typically, characters kinda assume their feelings, or get super butthurt or pissed off when the other person doesn't reciprocate and acts out till the other caves. Even this doesn't happen that often. They tend to be on exactly the same page all the time, which is something different that I've noticed about both series. But something in between, something not black and white. Most authors are afraid of expanding their stories, delving into more complex topics, often because they're afraid of upsetting their readers. But Harasona isn't, and that's the reason this is one of my favorite series. And it's also important to say this outright. Hirano and Kagiura is not supplementary material. You don't need Sasuke and Miyano to justify its existence, and it doesn't exist to fill in any blanks left by the main series. It's telling a very different kind of emotional story, with a different rhythm and a different kind of tension. Where Sasamiya is about recognition, Hitagaki is about endurance. They coexist and slowly learn to rely on each other, and standing on their own 2 feet all the while. And that's what I love about Hirano and Kagiura. It doesn't pretend to be subversive. It knows it's a mess of tropes, but instead of running from them, it uses them to tell a story that feels honest. The comedy, the sparkles, the awkward 10-second touches, it all builds this quiet, fumbling rhythm of 2 people trying to name what they're feeling. It's not slow because nothing's happening. It's slow because everything is. Every conversation, every brush of fingers, every time they say goodnight, each one is another small shift in gravity. These boys hit every single milestone in the book. And what makes Hirano and Kagiura so addictive isn't that it's slow, it's that it's steady. Their relationship moves like real emotional growth does, in tiny, almost invisible steps that only make sense when you look back and realize how far they've come. It's built on repetition, small moments that echo louder each time they happen. A pat on the head, a late-night talk, a shared laugh. Ordinary things that start feeling heavier, sharper, and harder to brush off. The slow burn works because the tension isn't about if something will happen, but when they'll stop pretending it already hasn't. When one of them says something sweet, the other's heart literally clenches and they can't help but grab at their own chest as if to hold on to the feeling, or almost as if the feeling physically pains them. They've already crossed so many invisible lines, like sharing a room, a rhythm, a life, and by the time either of them notices, they're too deep in it to untangle where friendship ends and something else begins. What I love is that it flips the rhythm of Sasuke and Miyano. Where Sasuke waits for Miyano to realize his feelings, here it's Kagiura waiting for Hirano to stop denying his. The pacing feels familiar, but it is still reversed. It's more of a reflection instead of a repeat. A mirror held up to a different kind of fear and longing. Kagiura, with all his straightforward sincerity, never hides what he feels. His love burns quietly but constantly, the kind that waits without fading. And Hirano, who tries so hard to stay logical, keeps meeting that warmth halfway without realizing it. Every time Kagiura lights up from a compliment, Hirano's heart stutters. Every time Hirano scolds Kagiura for not smiling when he's touched, it's because he wants to be the reason that he does. We have several time skips in Sasamiya, but we really go day by day in this one, which is why it's so slow, but it's important in this case. It's vital to see every single step because each small interaction, gesture, and conversation adds weight to their emotional growth. By showing the story day by day, we can witness how Hirano's brain gradually catches up to what his heart knows, and how Kagiura's steady affection slowly influences him over time. Every routine, every repeated touch, and every seemingly minor moment compound, creating a rhythm that makes their slow burn feel lived in, inevitable, and emotionally satisfying. Without seeing these tiny steps, the depth of their connection and the tension of their already in love but denying it dynamic would be totally lost. I like to imagine Sasamiya as an exponential curve while Hidekaki is linear. They slowly increase day after day, while Sasuke and Miyano took a long time to get there, but once they did, things heated up really fast. Both types of relationships are beautiful, and I'm so glad that we got to see both illustrated by this author's beautiful stories. Their slow burn isn't patient in the kind of slow that aches. They keep circling each other, pretending to be steady while their hearts race in completely different direction. Harusono makes you feel that contradiction, the quiet chaos of wanting something you cannot define yet. What really gets me is that it's not just Hirano who doesn't realize how much he wants to stay, it's both of them. They're so focused on managing their own feelings that they completely miss how deeply the other is already choosing them. They want the same future, they're just too afraid of being selfish to say it out loud. Kagiura worries he's asking for too much. Hirano worries he's doing something wrong by wanting anything at all. And meanwhile, they keep sharing rooms, routines, and quiet nights like it's the most natural thing in the world. The tragedy isn't that they're unsure, it's that they're already in line and don't know it yet. So where Sasuke and Miyano was about realizing love, Hirano and Kagiura is about already living it. Fumbling through it, resisting it, and eventually surrendering to it was there all along. Hirano is so smart and yet so dense at the same time. He's top of his class, meticulous about his studies, and yet completely clueless about his own love life. He doesn't realize that 1. Kagi can and does get jealous, and 2. That chocolate on Valentine's Day might be romantic until Kagi literally spells it out for him. It's ridiculous that Kagiura confesses to him 3 times before he finally gets it. There's this one scene where Hirano squints at Kagiura several times, which, by the way, the chapter is beautiful. While sparkles dance around Kagi whenever Hirano looks at him, Hirano blames it on the sun, saying, and I quote, "Man, the sun is dazzling today. That is bullshit, my man." Then there's the whole sky motif. Kagiura keeps comparing to Hirano to the sky, and Hirano himself is constantly drawn to it. It's almost like his motif, something that defines him. I believe it's because he wants to be a pilot. He is one of the adult AU, so he just constantly looks at the sky. Then, in one of the more recent-ish chapters, I think it's 29, he views Kagi set against the sky and compares the two, saying the sky really suits him. These are all subconscious signs of his feelings, and these aren't even all of them. The 10-second thing is another example. Originally, Hirano rejects Kagiura, which we'll talk about later, but he agrees to try doing couple-like things, and that's how we end up with them touching like lovers for 10 seconds every day. Which is insane, because that's exactly the point. They're basically acting married and don't even realize it. He repeatedly gets pissed off at Kagiura basically looking sad, and we know it's because he wants more, but Hirano doesn't know that. Whenever Hirano touches him, he ends up snapping and telling Kagi that he should look happy when he touches him, because he always says that Hirano touching him makes us happy, yet never looks it. He agrees to do that in the first place because he subconsciously wants to see Kagiura happy up close and wants to be the one making him feel that way. Denial is a river in Egypt, Hirano. There's also this anime-only scene where Hanzawa talks about love and it pans to Hirano smiling at the window at Kagiura, basically revealing that he does have someone in mind. Sasuke's reactions to basically catching these guys in 4K several times is also really funny. Again, showing how they really are close and just refuse to admit it for some reason. I will also like to add now that Hirano's feelings have been revealed in chapter 34, we actually do know that Hirano and Kagiura were dating by this time in the anime, which is really cool. He also tries to rationalize feelings with logic, shown all throughout the manga, but especially in the Venn diagram scene. You can't logic your way out of feelings or push them down like there's something to be solved. Kagiura even says, If I could fall out of love with you that easily, I wouldn't have told you in the first place. And he's right. Feelings don't just disappear on command. Hirano spends ages trying to debate himself into not feeling anything, shoving away every heartbeat and stomach flutter like he can outthink them. But you simply can't. He treats his emotions like a math problem that'll make sense if he just gathers enough data, like that Venn diagram. But the heart doesn't work on logic. It's not a proof to solve. It's something you have to feel. And that's what makes his realization that he does love Kagiura really hit in the end. I know it's pretty obvious that Kagi's love language is physical touch, but Hirano's is definitely words of affirmation and acts of service. His heart beats whenever he thinks about something sweet that Kagi says about him, examples being chapter 27 and I think 31. His blushes in these moments are clear signs that his heart is already listening, even when his brain refuses to. He also does way more for Kagi than he needs to, because he loves him, and that's his way of showing it, which he actually acknowledges in chapter 34 when Kagi makes him the Mitarashi Dango and he says something along the lines of, "Guess that's another reason why you would, huh?" Referring to the fact that Kagi likes him, loves him, and so he would just do things like this for no reason at all. What's even more fascinating is how Harusono shifts perspective between stories. To Sasaki, Miyano is gentle and passionate. To Hirano, who'll deal with them primarily in student council context or when he's yelling about BL, Miyano is an unhinged, intense, hyper-focused force of chaos. The difference shows how our view of people depends entirely on our relationship with them. This even translates into the drawings. I might be delusional, but this is just what I think. In Sasamiya, Hirano is seen as this super studious, cool, bad boy-esque character. He's super serious and barely smiles at all. But then, in Hidakagi, we see him for what he really is, just a kid. He just shows more emotions, and it feels like overall rounder, if that makes sense. Because let's be honest, if Hirano is the logic, Kagiura is the feeling. Now, let's pivot to the boy who forced Hirano to confront those feelings. Kagiura is the kind of person who loves first and thinks later. He feels everything at full volume. The affection, the jealousy, the ache of wanting to be close to someone who kept stepping away. Where Hirano spends ages trying to logic his way out of love, Kagiura's heart just refuses to be quiet. He doesn't hold back what he feels because he doesn't know how to. He's honest to the point of being overwhelming. When he confesses, he really means it. And when he says he'll wait, he actually does the best that he can. And when Hirano rejects him at first, he doesn't just stop caring, he just learns to love in quieter ways. It's really not perfect and it's definitely messy, but that's what makes Kagiura so human. He's not some idealized, patient love interest. He's a teenager trying to figure out how to balance his own feelings with someone else's comfort. Kagiura wears his heart like it's part of his uniform. Visible, unbuttoned, completely unfiltered. But the thing is, his emotional openness isn't just cute, it's risky. He feels so deeply that it hurts. His jealousy isn't toxic per se, but it is real. The kind that makes your chest twist because you care too much. He's not proud of it, but he doesn't lie about it either. He doesn't perform control the way Hirano does. He's just trying to survive the flood of feelings he's still learning to navigate. And it's not like he's some love-struck fool either. Kagiura's self-awareness is quietly incredible. He knows when he crosses the line. He knows when he's being selfish. When he apologizes for kissing Hirano without consent, it's not an empty oops, it's real accountability. You can see that he understands he crossed a boundary. He looks terrified that he might have ruined something precious. That moment isn't about romantic tension. It's about growth. And Harusono lets it be uncomfortable. She doesn't glamorize it. What's beautiful about Kagiura is that he changes, but not in the way you might expect. His growth isn't about loving less, it's about loving better. He learns that love isn't constant reinsurance, but it's trust. That affection isn't possession, it's care. He goes from trying to prove that his feelings are real to simply showing up day after day, without needing Hirano to reciprocate everything right away. That's maturity. Not the stoic adult kind, but the quiet, stumbling teenage kind that hurts because you're actually trying. And that's why his relationship with Hirano is so magnetic. They're complete opposites in how they process emotion. Hirano turns inward, Kagiura turns outward. Hirano hides behind logic while Kagiura blurts out truth. Hirano builds walls while Kagiura knocks on every door until one opens. Hirano grounds Kagiura and Kagiura cracks Hirano open. They balance chaos with restraint and fear with faith. And then there's his optimism, that ridiculous, relentlessly, painfully bright optimism. It drives Hirano insane, but it's also what changes him. Kagiura believes in feelings the way some people believe in gravity, as something that exists whether you understand it or not. He knows that love can't always make sense, and yet he trusts it anyway. That's what makes him brave, because loving someone who might never love you back is terrifying, and he does it anyway. Even their love languages reflect that tension. When Kagiura leans on him, Hirano freezes. When Hirano actually says something affectionate, Kagiura practically explodes. They're mismatched in the best way possible, constantly learning how to translate each other's hearts. I feel that this is shown really well in those chapter covers that have two sides, in this manga and in Sasuke and Yano, and I have a special place in my heart for these drawings. A lot of the times the purpose of these drawings, in my opinion, is to just contrast the character's perspective and personalities. So yeah, maybe Hirano's the one who learns to love, but Kagiura's the one who teaches what love actually looks like. Unfiltered, awkward, and real. He's not perfect, but he is brave. And when he says, "If I could fall out of love with you that easily, I wouldn't have told you in the first place," it hits really hard because it's absolutely true. You can't logic away your feelings. You can only live through them, and that's what Kagiura does. He's the kind of character who reminds you that love doesn't have to be tidy to be true. It just has to be honest and respectful. So, by the time the story really gets going, the feelings are already there. Kagiura knows what he feels. Hirano doesn't, but his actions betray him constantly. The problem isn't attraction, it's calibration. How much is too much? How soon is too soon? Where does caring stop and responsibility begin? What I find fascinating is that the manga doesn't let either of them stay static. Kagiura doesn't learn to love by being louder or more persistent. He learns by pulling back. He has to confront the idea that sincerity alone isn't enough, that wanting something deeply doesn't automatically make it safe to pursue in the same way. Love, for him, becomes quieter over time, more controlled, less about reassurance and more about presence. Hirano's growth moves in the opposite direction. He starts out treating affection like something external, something that happens to him, not something he participates in. But, gradually, he begins to recognize that neutrality is a choice too, that agreeing to stay to try to engage, even without any certainty, carries weight. He can't keep acting as though his closeness has no impact. What makes the dynamic work is that the story lets them misalign without resolving it immediately. There's no sudden emotional synchronization. No moment where they magically want the same thing at the same time. Instead, love becomes something they negotiate daily, through small adjustments, unspoken recalibrations, and the slow recognition of how deeply they already matter to each other. I also really love whenever they grasp their chests after the other does something sweet. It's so cute. Especially their faces whenever it happens, and it's like a really good marker for the passage of time and the growth of their feelings. So, this is where Hirano and Kagiura feels more grounded than most romances. Love isn't treated as a finish line. It's treated as a responsibility that changes shape as both people change. And that's why it feels messy, because it is. But it's also careful and intentional and earned. Now, this is where things get complicated. Like, really complicated. The kind of complicated where even I misanalyze everything, had to sit back and go, wait, how do I feel about this? It's true that, technically speaking, Kagi does kiss Hirano without consent. That moment is undeniably an assault, and I don't want to downplay that fact. But what makes this manga different from so many other toxic BL stories is what happens afterward. Kagiura actually apologizes. He takes responsibility for what he did, and throughout the story, you can see him making an actual effort to respect Hirano's boundaries. It doesn't erase what happened, of course, but it does show a level of self-awareness and emotional growth that's often missing in the genre. Still, one thing I don't like, and what honestly makes me uncomfy, is that Kagiura constantly reminds Hirano that he loves him. He is right about Hirano forgetting if he doesn't remind him, and it's sweet on the surface, but it's also a lot. It's the reason I can't glaze over the story the way I did with Sasuke and Miyano. I still stand by my words there, but here is different. Because here, Kagiura is just more forceful about it. Like, he straight up doesn't accept Hirano's full rejection. At least with Miyano, he didn't reject Sasuke. He just needed time to think about it. And the fact that he didn't immediately reject Sasuke showed that he already felt something more than friendship. But Kagi? Kagi was straight up rejected, and I honestly feel like he should have stopped there. If Hirano had said something initially like, "Hey, I'm having second thoughts about rejecting you," then sure, keep going. But that's not what happens. I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, and this is easily the part I had the hardest time writing about because every way I rephrased had me either too soft or too harsh. I was very adamant about not liking essaying my Sasuke and Miyano video, but somehow I'm okay with the technical essay here. And that's what makes this so hard to talk about. I've said before that I'm strongly against romanticizing sexual assault or boundary violations in any form of media. So, it makes me question myself. Why am I not reacting as strongly here? It's not about me getting attached either, because I have no qualms with dropping a series that gives me an ick I can't get over. Why am I still empathizing with Kagi? It's uncomfortable to admit, but I think it's because his remorse feels real. He knows he did something wrong, he truly apologizes, changes his behavior, and genuinely tries to do better. The writing acknowledges the harm instead of pretending it didn't happen. It doesn't make it okay, but it does make it human. And that's what makes this whole situation so delicate. The manga doesn't necessarily put Kagi in the wrong, but it definitely doesn't put him in the right either. Or, not that he's in the right at all, more that his actions are understandable, but they were not right. He was not right to kiss Hirano without the consent. That's not up for debate. But, do we invalidate his feelings? No. Harasuna makes it clear that Kagi's emotions are real. They're not going to disappear just because he tells himself to stop. But Hirano isn't a villain for rejecting him either, at first anyway. And even though Hirano rejects Kagiura, the fact that he agrees to try a relationship with him shows that he almost wants to like Kagiura. I think this is even explicitly stated. But that choice, right there, says a lot. Hirano's not indifferent, he's conflicted. Now, I'm not saying that you can't love a friend deeply and still keep it platonic. That happens all the time. But Hirano's behavior stands out. The way he goes out of his way for Kagiura, the concern, the protectiveness, the small gestures. It's not what most people will call normal. He's trying to convince himself that his attachment is ordinary, but deep down he knows it's not. That's what makes him such a fascinating character to me. He's constantly negotiating between what he feels and what he thinks he should feel. And I just want to sit down and have a long talk with him about that. Because whether he realizes it or not, he's already blurring his own emotional boundaries. Also, I use the word normal very loosely because normal is a social construct. Everyone defines it differently based on their background, their own circumstances. What even is normal? Everyone's got their own unique qualities, and not being normal isn't a bad thing. I'd argue it's actually a good thing. We need more diversity. So that's where the story lives, and that gray, uncomfortable space wherein no one's completely right, but no one's completely wrong either. It's about how people cross lines, regret it, and try to redraw them, and how love, sometimes, doesn't stay neatly on one side of the boundary. Oh, and so one thing I can't help but speculate about is the dorm rules about dating. If it's not allowed, then they most likely wouldn't be allowed to stay roommates, of course. I imagine that since Hanzawa definitely knows what's going on, he would purposely never ask directly if they're dating or not because he doesn't want to have to do something about it. If anyone found out though, I honestly don't think it would end up well. I remember it being mentioned in Sasami that Hirano moved out of the dorms as soon as possible, and people were questioning why since they would have at least fallen for each other by then. But I'm starting to think this could be some sort of compromise that they were forced to make in order to not cause too much trouble. I don't have any particular feelings about hoping whether this happens or not, but this is something that I've been thinking about for a while now that I wanted to mention. Hirokagi has a smaller cast than Sasuke and Miyano, but these characters end up having a more direct influence on the pair, each in their own quiet way. Hanzawa, for example, is a surprisingly central presence in the story, even appearing alongside Hirano Kagiura in official art. He still carries an air of mystery, but over time we're allowed to see more facets of him, especially in how he interacts with them. I feel like he offers a more neutral presence in the story, even through his supposed homophobia, which we know he isn't, by the way. But he's a calming presence in both mangas that offers the characters advice, all while secretly rooting for them, and they, in turn, give him hope for his gay brothers when he sees how happy they are together. One specific instance is when he lets Hirano Kagiura play around with the camera and an extra, and accidentally captures Hirano's completely carefree smile, which he deletes with the comment about Kagiura having to be more careful. He really does care about his friends, and due to previous trauma experiencing his brother get into an abusive relationship, he's worried about how to treat each other, but both couples help him get past that. Ichinose served a similar function, though to a lesser degree. He's more placed as a comparison to rooming with Kagiura, because while he is a good senpai, him and Hirano never got quite as close as Hirano and Kagiura. He also helped with assisting Hirano in clarifying what he's feeling, especially with what I mentioned before, comparisons. He also definitely knows about Hirakagi's kinda more than friends, less than officially lovers relationship, seeing as he caught them hugging in a chocolate incident even before they actually got together in chapter 34. And when Hirano is spiraling over definitions, what love is supposed to look like, what it's supposed to feel like, Ichinose doesn't give him an answer so much as he gives him the permission to define it for himself. Then there's Miyano, who's basically foreshadowing incarnate. He doesn't directly interfere, but his offhand BL references nudge Hirano towards realizing his own feelings. One specific instance of this is when Hirano is trying to deny to himself that his heart races around Kagi, even without touching. And Miyano explains a BL manga moment that he read where one of the characters thinks that they want to see the person that they're in love with. He also says, though Hirano tuned them out, that often a person's heart stops racing around their lover once they get used to them. And also mentions that a person's heart can race when they're surprised, which Hirano immediately jumps on. Shortly after this, Hirano thinks about missing Kagiura and his heart races, which he vehemently denies with selective logic in the next chapter. Miyano's presence is like the universe whispering, accept it already, dude. And now for Nibashi, I honestly really like Nibashi. I understand his insecurity with words on a very real level. I don't think he likes Kagiura romantically at all. In fact, I really love their friendship because of what it gives both of them. Kagiura doesn't mind Nibashi's bluntness. In fact, he needs it. He listens when Nibashi says something sharp or honest because he trusts that it comes from a place of care. And Nibashi, in turn, gets to let his guard down around Kagiura. He doesn't have to overthink every sentence or soften his edges in the same way. There's something about Kagiura's openness that makes Nibashi feel safer. Like he can speak plainly without being misunderstood or judged. That sense of ease matters, especially for someone who's so clearly aware about how his words can affect others. At this point, Nibashi is also so invested in Hirano and Kagiura as a pair. Especially in the more recent chapters, you can feel how much he's rooting for them. He sees what they have, maybe more clearly than they do, and he pushes them when it's appropriate. He's basically just the rest of us screaming at our phones waiting for these two to get together. He also gets Kagiura to slow down, keeping him from falling completely headfirst and getting him to navigate his feelings before doing anything rash. I consider Nibashi to be the mostly romantic, common sense Hirano and Kagiura, which is sorely needed as our main characters are Hirano. I have no idea how going above and beyond for my roommate can be seen as romantic taiga, and Kagiura, I'm skipping wanting to date my roommate to wanting to marry him Akira. I also have to mention, the little handwritten background conversations are so underrated. They shrink the world just a bit, making the cast feel more intimate and real. And the civil law thread is one of my favorites. It's literally brought up 3 times. I love reading them so much and I always get excited whenever they show up. Everyone around Hirano and Kagiura sees it. That's one of the quiet jokes of this series. Their relationship is never treated as some hidden, impossible to detect secret. It's treated like something painfully obvious that only the people inside couldn't name yet. Nibashi clocks it almost immediately. Hanzawa watches it unfold with the unreadable calmness. Even Ichinose, from a distance, notices a difference in how Hirano exists around Kagiura. This isn't a story where the world is blind to queerness. It's a story where the boys themselves are the last ones to catch up. So yeah, Hirano and Kagiura may look like a spin-off full of sparkles and cliches, but what it really is a story about two people stumbling their way towards love, messing up, apologizing, and trying again. It's awkward, it's sweet, and it's exactly as human as love tends to be. And maybe next time I'll put the pretty dedication screen back. But for now, I think this one speaks for itself.